Hello, hello. Can anybody hear me?
Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you
All
hear me?
right. Yeah, I heard you too. So,
Awesome.
does it sound like I'm eating the mic today?
I didn't hear you like that yesterday either, but for some reason that recording came out like that. You sounded very clear to me.
All righty.
I could hear your melodious voice the whole time.
Well, you were listening to someone else then.
Oh, that's true. I must have been.
All right. Now, I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm just here as eye candy. So,
Oh, holy hell. If you're the eye candy, we're in deep trouble. No, SG's here for support, but he knows this program as well as I do, so no one better for it than him, I think.
I've done it a little bit. You know,
Damn, I can't. Is this like those little strawberry wrapped candies that grandma's always had? No?
I'm one of those candies that you just want to savor in a dish somewhere in the back of the cupboard. You know,
Oh gosh, not one of not no, no. You're a little bit more than those little sticky candies that have been there for a while. The ones you can't quite get the wrapper off of.
we'll
Are we
give it a
that
little bit
candy though
before
that
we
you
get
can't quite
started.
get the wrapping off of though?
Yeah. Everlasting gobstopper.
Oh, we're not. It's not going to have colored text though, and there's a specific reason for that. It's going to be just the regular text that you see for any member. Once, if a helper decides to make the move to guide and they make it to guide, then they'll get the colored text.
Yeah, we want to ensure that they're actually doing it to help, not just to get the color text. So,
How many licks does it take to get to the center of who? Me or SG?
depends on when you ask. Don't ever apologize for the number 69. That's like a sacred number. So,
Did he even get to 3? I thought it was 2, but it might be 3. Okay, we'll give it a couple more minutes before we start. So are we ready? I think we are, right?
Yeah, and looks like everyone that's coming, at least right now, is here. So
Alrighty. So um just a quick little rundown of our introductions from yesterday. I'm Laura Violet and he's Sweet Guy, and we've both been with the guide program for what seems like forever, almost since its inception in the program when we both joined. Actually, was there a guide program when you joined?
yeah, but it
Okay.
was pretty much like, I want to be a guide. Okay, here you are. Have fun.
When I joined, there was no volunteer program. I mean, there were literally like 30 to 40 people on the site. We didn't even have a bordello at the time. And but very shortly after, yeah, we pretty much are almost the foundation too. But yeah, we they implemented the volunteer program after I joined, and it's been pretty neat to see how it's grown since then, how even the guide role has grown. At the beginning, it was still, what it is now, which is basically helping out all of our members, but with focus on our new members, making sure that they have someone to greet them and someone who can help them learn the basics of the site. But it's grown exponentially since then, not only in the amount of volunteers, and from there it's branched off to other volunteer teams, but just in what they do on a daily basis. Some people think that being a guide is boring, and compared to being an ambassador where they're focusing on parties and having all that fun, it is different, but it can be a lot of fun. I mean, that's one of the reasons SG and I stayed with the program, is because we enjoyed it so much. And right now, their their main focus was being stationed in the Welcome Center, because that's where we had all the new members popping in. And at the time when we made the decision to do that, because before, guides were everywhere, all over the site, and especially because they were giving tours. Tours is a big thing of being a guide, it's a must. And that gets you around to different parts of the site. But once we saw how many more members, new members especially, we had logging in, we needed to have a place where our guides could easily be found and where we could have someone to greet them, someone, a friendly face that will not just say hi, but will offer their help. And yes, we have many regular members who do that as well, even without becoming guides themselves. Some just want to do it just because they like helping. They go there to have fun, but they also want to help. Um, and at the time, that made a lot of sense, because we needed the coverage. I mean, sometimes you could have 3, 4, 5 guides in there and other volunteers, and there was just still a swarm of new members coming in, and you'd have one guide with multiple PMs helping multiple people at a time. So that's their main focus. But now we're branching it out a little bit more, because we do get members who log in and immediately they're so excited to see everything. They don't just stay in that room, they leave, and they end up in transport center most of the time. Sometimes it's because the welcome center might be empty.
Yeah,
We don't schedule our guides. We like, or any of our World Ops volunteers, we let them come and go as they please. So, everyone has real lives, families, jobs, school, whatever. And sometimes you just don't feel like logging in. So whenever you can, whenever you have free time, you they can log in and help. You were going to say something? Sorry.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say, apparently, giving, handcuffing them down is not available until they get, VIP and stuff. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Exactly. We hand out handcuffs with the when you get your guide badge. But so now we're expanding it to being able to be in the excuse me, in the transport center as well, so that they can find some of the stragglers that get out there and maybe aren't finding help. But one of the main aspects of being a guide is providing information for the members, useful information like um, the fact that they offer tours. Most people, even though they'll see the guide badge above a guide's head, they don't necessarily know that means that they will give you a tour or can give you a tour of the site. So we ask our guides to make sure that they're, throughout their shift, offering tours, asking new members. Sometimes a member won't see it in local, so maybe ask them in PM. Some members will want to go out and see the site. Others want to slowly get their feet wet. We have posters and signs throughout the Welcome Center with helpful tips, helpful information, but we also ask our guides, don't just point to a poster, don't just point to a sign. If someone asks a question, don't say, if you click that sign, you'll get the information there. That's why we have like SG and I were saying yesterday, the human touch. We want it to be more personal. Otherwise, we could just have bots saying, if you click here, if you click there, or just tossing out the information. This way we can personalize the information a little bit more and especially tailored to each person's needs. Yes, they are fun, but for a different reason. I'll stop that. Um, but and that's just it. Just like we're all individuals, and I think that's what makes our volunteer program from the guides to the ambassadors to tech balls so very special is that we're all different. While we have our guidelines and our protocols and certain standards and rules that we need to follow, we all still bring our own personalities into the program. And that's what makes it nice for new members as well. When they're asking you a question, they may ask me a question, they may ask SG the same exact question. And while they
oh
may
yeah.
get a very similar answer, they're going to get our own response to it, not a formula response, not something that World Ops handed to us and said, here, answer this, because it may work for one, it may not work for another.
And
So go ahead.
we may think of something that the other didn't, or
Yeah.
think of a different way to put it.
And that's also part of being an individual with our members being individuals as well. Some members learn at different paces. Some like to come in and don't really want to ask questions, don't want help. They are happy just reading signs, reading up the information themselves and asking questions as they go or just exploring on their own. Some members, like when I joined, I had no experience with virtual worlds whatsoever. I was so green to the whole thing and not just my basic avatar. I was literally, I didn't have a computer at home. I didn't have internet. I used to come into RLC from work. I know that's horrible and you should never do it, but I did. And had I not done that, I probably wouldn't be here today. I don't know. Um, but I had no experience with virtual worlds. Some people will be in other virtual sites, and while we all of the sites have different ways of controlling and moving and different UIs, the concept is still kind of pretty much the same. And if you have experience with virtual worlds, you can catch on pretty quickly, even when trying to learn a whole new program. But there are other people who, again, like me, I had no idea what anything was. And luckily, I had a friend that I came in here with who had told me about about RLC and got me intrigued. And I came in and I thought, yeah, I'm not going to be here long. But he showed me the ropes. And that's what our guides do. He showed me based on what I needed to learn and how I needed to learn it. All our members are different. Some we have to almost basically hold their hand and walk them through step by step every little basic thing from how to right click on an avatar, how to choose, how to add a friend, how to send a private message, how to even click a door, little things like that. That's the base of what our guides are doing is showing them the ropes, getting them accustomed to how our UI and how our site works.
Yeah, and one of the most common questions I've been asked over the years, how do I send an email?
Mhm.
Not how do I send an email from the social center? How do I send an actual email? And sometimes it goes to the extent where they don't even know their own email address. And you've got to adapt to that. And sometimes you may have to keep explaining it over and over, but that's some of the things that we deal with too.
Yeah, and people learn at different paces. You explain it to one person and they'll pick it up right away. Someone else, like SG saying, you'll have to repeat it a few times. So having patience, having a lot of patience is core to being a guide. Um, you I know it's hard sometimes with some people. We all go through it, but I've learned an incredible amount of patience being in this program and helping people because you do realize that it's not that people are dumb and it's not that people are slow. It's just everyone learns in a different way. And when you come into RLC, it can all be very overwhelming. You're seeing everything, even if you know on virtual sites, you're seeing everything and trying to learn everything at the same time. And when you come in, again, like I did, not knowing anything about it, it's even more overwhelming. So they have to be able to teach all the functions of the site. And some people may be happy with just being taught a few little things here and there, some of the basics, and then they're happy being on their way and kind of want to be left alone. Others will want you to detail every single little thing that there is to do. So
Yep.
that's another thing that we can do as guides is ask a member, okay, what are you looking to do while you're here? And you go from there. And it's the same way when you're giving a tour. Our guides may have a specific planned route that they want to go, seeing the main RLC venues, even some of the more popular venues that our members have created. A lot of them try to take them to the more populated places, but it's a great way to show members the functions of the site, like how to click a door, how to switch a dimension if you end up in a different dimension than your guide, little things like that. How to use the different portals, so a lot of people like to take the tours to the transport center because there you have the events calendar. Okay, here's how you can look up different things to do. And they're teaching you as well as showing you. They're not just taking you from place to place. And that's also something that you have to adapt to each person. Um,
Yeah, I've
some, go ahead.
over the years, I've had tours where they want to know where all the hot spots, all the party places, things like that. So my tour focuses more on where the activity is,
Hmm.
and then some people's like, okay, show me all the things you can do. So, okay, let's go here. We've got drinking here.
Yep.
Okay, now you're done here. Let's go to the lagoon so we can teach you how to swim. And then the next one just wants
How
to
to
know all
skate.
about, okay, how do we do the sex? So then here's a place where you can go to train with the bots.
And
So,
that's one thing, speaking of the sex, our guides are not allowed to do, and none of our volunteers are allowed to do, is have sex. We can't even demo it. And some members do want a guide to demo it for them. They can't. But they, rather than saying, oh, I can't help you with that, they can explain it to you how to get nude, that you have to get nude, first of all, how to get nude, how to, invite someone for sex, and then how to click the sexable furniture. And yeah, so you have to adapt. You have to be willing to adapt to different members. You can't, I've seen some guides in the past where they will just stick to their formulated answers or to just one tour, and they're not very open to trying to branch out from that. You have to be able to because everyone's different.
yep, so many different personalities, so many different, some
Our,
people are a little more outgoing, and
yeah.
some people just kind of want to stick to a corner.
Hmm. I think well, no, actually, I didn't do that when I first joined. I won't say how I didn't do that, but never mind. That's a different story for another day. I know SG's heard this one, so we'll leave it at that for now.
I've even
Another
seen some
thing,
of it, but
stop it. Anyway, yeah, SG knows way too much about me. I think I met him like what, 2 months or so after I joined?
Something like that.
Something like that. So yeah, 16 years, he's known a little bit too much. But back to what we were talking about. Another thing our guides have to be willing to do is they have to be willing to use a translator. We have so many different members from so many different countries, some that do speak English perfectly. I can't even speak English perfectly, apparently. But a lot of our members don't speak it at all or speak very, very minimal. And a lot of them aren't willing to use translators. As guides, as volunteers, we have to be willing to do so. In an ideal world, we'd have X amount of volunteers per language that could focus on just the people who speak their language. Unfortunately, we don't have the manpower for that. We have volunteers or people who have wanted to apply or have applied in the past, um, who want to focus only on helping the people from the French dimension, the people from the Italian dimension. Again, in an ideal world, that would be wonderful if we could do that, but we can't. We have to be willing to communicate with anyone and everyone as best as we can, and that's where um, translators come in handy. They're not perfect. One thing we have to account for is slang. Some translators won't know some slang terms. There's also text speech and text shortcuts. Translators won't pick up on that, so they won't translate them very well. But as long as you're giving it a try, you're trying to communicate with people in their own language, that goes so far, and for the most part, members will appreciate that effort that you're making. You can't just say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't speak," like, if you have someone message you in Greek and all you speak is French and English, "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't speak your language," and then not help them. You have to be willing to help them. Now, if someone who does speak that language is on, you can try to pass it on to them, but we like for our guides to ask that member first. Like, say, SG has someone in Spanish and he doesn't speak Spanish, but he knows I'm on. Rather than saying, "Oh, Laura Violet's on, she'll help you." He'll message me and say, "Hey, are you busy right now? I have a member who only speaks Spanish. Do you have time to help him?" And then I can tell him, "No, you're on your own. I don't want to help you." Or I can tell him,
She tells me that often, but
I do all the time, as often as I can. But no, sometimes I'll be busy with something. I may be helping another member. I may be addressing an issue where most of the time I can be answering PMs, but if a member is being a little difficult, my focus has to be on that member and that situation a bit more. And I'll tell him, you know what, I can't right now, but I'll grab it as soon as I can. In the meantime, he'll be trying to help the member. We
yeah,
can't just assume that the person's gonna be free. Same with like a guide. A guide may be on a tour. So that person may speak Spanish, but if they're touring someone, we prefer that they're focused on that tour
yeah,
rather than
exactly.
taking attention away from it. If it's something quick to answer, sure, super easy, but sometimes it'll be a little bit more drawn out than that.
And
And
the
go ahead.
something quick very often turns into a 30-minute discussion. So,
Yes, it really does at times. And but that is because we're willing to give them more information, and sometimes answering one question will bring up a whole mess of other questions that they hadn't thought of and they'll be thinking of along the way. Another thing too is to be a guide, and pretty much to be a volunteer on the site, even though it is an international multilingual site, is you have to have a core understanding of English. Um, Being able to read it, being able to understand it, being able to communicate in English. It's great to be able to speak multiple languages, but all of our communication with you is in English. Our guide handbook, our volunteer forum, our emails, everything we communicate to you is in English. Again, in an ideal world, we'd be able to translate it into all of your languages and go that way, but we just don't have the manpower for that kind of thing, especially to check and make sure it's um, that it's translated properly so that everyone can understand what's being said in it. And when we have meetings, you just can't be translating or, doing like, they do at the Olympics where they'll do it in English, French, and then whatever language of the country that the Olympics are in. We can't be doing that. That would just take way too long. And a
Yeah,
lot of people
it's
don't have that kind of time. You know, SG and I are here for 8 hours, so we have the time. We could do it, but
yeah. Well,
we're
and
doing other things as well.
even still, when our um, dimensions were separated into languages, I may go into a Spanish dimension for a call or something, and suddenly the entire chat is full of Spanish.
Mhm.
And ask her, I know, yo quiero Taco Bell and hasta la vista, baby, and that's about it. So
That's not
I'm
going to help
sitting
our
here,
members.
no. So I'm sitting here having to translate every single line just to figure out if any of them's even talking to me. And then, you know, if what the reason I was actually there, I need to try to translate that too.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
It can get overwhelming,
yeah,
but that's where patience comes in. We have to be very, very patient when helping our members. I know I've learned a lot of patience throughout the years working on this site, and I'm glad for it. It's helped me in real life too.
yep,
But yeah, being able to communicate. And you know, you could go on your own and translate that stuff, and we know that some people do, but it's just a lot of information, especially when first joining the site. We give our, you know, the guides that we choose, we give them about a week, week and a half to be able to catch up on as much of it as they can, to read the guide handbook, to read through the volunteer forum, their sections mainly, and any important updates that have happened in the past. That's a lot of information to read, and then to have to also translate it, it's just too much. So while we're not trying to be racist or prejudiced or you know, we're definitely not discriminating against anybody who doesn't communicate well in English. It's just very vital because that's how our communication has to be. It has to be universal for everybody. It just makes it a lot easier.
yeah. And whenever I'm talking to someone from a different language, I always give them the, deal that, hey, I'm using a translator, so forgive me. Basically,
Mhm.
I may be wrong and I may also be slow, but I'm trying.
You're trying, and our members really appreciate that. And it helps them understand why you're taking longer to reply to them. So one more thing before we get off of the guide section and go a little bit into what our leaders do. Our guides don't have a boot function at all. They're not even really supposed to be addressing any issues, which is why sometimes you may PM a guide if you need to report something and they tell you you're going to have to speak to a protector or let me get a protector for you or a staff mod or a community moderator. They're not trying to pass you off. They're not trying to get rid of you. It's not that they don't want to help you, it's that they're not allowed to, because it's beyond their scope. We want guides to focus on giving of information and of helping new members and even helping regular members. They're not just focused on on new members. They're focused on helping anyone who has questions that they can answer for them. But when it comes to addressing issues, it's just we only allow our guides to address issues if no one else is on and it's a very, very minor issue, like say a basic with tats. And it's really not so much enforcing the rule in that case, it's just kind of giving them a polite little tap on the shoulder and
Yeah, informing
explaining the
them.
rule or the protocol to them so that the member understands. And most times the member will, oh, okay, I didn't know, I'm sorry, and they'll change. And if not, then if it becomes a bigger issue, then, you know, the guide knows that they need to take screenshots and report it to us, and we handle it when we can. Same thing with like maybe a shirtless or a nude basic. Just the very most minor things. Also if people are maybe fighting and again, they can't get a hold of anyone to come in and handle it. They'll try to, you know, go in and try to diffuse it a little bit, telling people, please make sure you use your ignore. Please, you know, if you're having an issue with someone, take screenshots, report it, and then they'll explain how to report it, but they can't boot you. They really shouldn't be addressing those issues. They shouldn't even really be collecting screenshots from you. They should be telling you how to properly report it up to the proper channels.
Yeah, because there's a lot of these situations. have to be learned how to deal with. So sometimes you can go into a situation and saying one thing can ignite it into a big full on. So basically, you kind of got to learn what to say and when to say. And not only then, but if it's a situation where something is, you know, is going to be needed for a boot, we don't want them going in, getting it up to that point, and then not being able to do anything about it.
Yeah. And this is where our leader role comes in. Leaders basically do the same exact thing that a guide does, from giving information, greeting new members, offering tours. Leaders still, one of their main focuses is still to give tours, but the leaders have the additional function of being able to address minor issues, again, like basics with TADs, partially or fully nude basics, members wearing spots and shadows. And I know spots and shadows is a big one that members, those spots and shadows are really cool. I have one myself that I'm so bummed that I can't wear. It's a really, really nice Captain America shield. But the reason it's not allowed is because it was found to just create a lot of lag. For some reason, I don't know if it's the prop or the way the prop is
Yeah,
added, it just creates so much lag in the region.
yeah. One of the things with a lot of the textures like that is because of the way computer graphics work, they have to be done in multiples of 8. So that's why you see like 100, 64-bit, 128, things like that. They have to be done in those multiples, and if they're not, if they're even one digit off, it can cause a world of lag.
Yeah.
And so a lot of those spots and things just aren't sized properly. And so they can cause more lag than having a big, jet in the region.
And sometimes one member may be the only one wearing it and it won't cause lag, but once we allow one member to use it, then others start using it. And then that's where I remember when it first started, even our boss, Shantastic, when she was with the site, she was trying to get into trans to see what this was all about because it was creating a big old stir. And I think you guys can hear my dog in the background. She's drinking water. So if you hear some water lapping, that's her. Um, she couldn't even get into the region, and Shan had a good connection. She had a good computer. She very rarely had those kind of problems, but she just was not able to get into and stay in the region because it just lagged so much and so badly. So that's a little bit of an explanation as to why that's not allowed. But those are the types of things that our leaders can address. They can also diffuse, try to help diffuse minor minor arguments. Oh God, I couldn't even think of what I was trying to say. Sorry about that. They can diffuse minor arguments, and our leaders do have the ability to boot, but they only have the ability to boot you from the region. They can't boot you from the site. So if things get out of hand, if you're arguing and fighting in local and they're asking you to use ignore, asking you to take it to PM, asking you to stop, and you simply aren't, they can boot you from the region. Booting someone from the region who's wearing, who's a basic with tattoos, since that's something that we allow in the anything goes and AG roleplay dimensions, booting from the region is really not going to help because they're going to end up in a standard dimension anyway and still be in violation. In those cases, they would need to pass it up to a protector, community moderator, or staff mod. And if none of us are around, they have to take screenshots and report it up the ladder. But so that's the main difference between a leader and a guide, and it's basically a training ground for protector, for a possible protector role in the future.
Yeah.
One thing about when you make it to the guide program, there is no guarantee that you'll make it to leader, and there's no guarantee that if you make it to leader, you will make it to protector, but it's a good stepping stone for that protector position because it gets you used to handling situation. It gets you used to dealing with the little different things that happen here and there. And it gets you used to being yelled at by members. It really does. You got to have a
Yeah.
very thick skin to do what we do. You have no idea how much we get yelled at throughout the day, but people just, and we get it. Some of these rules, not everyone agrees with, and we understand why. But the fact is, the rules are the rules and they're there for a reason. It's how Brian wants it. We all agreed to them when we first signed up. So this is a good way for leaders to kind of get a feel for what it will be like as a protector addressing bigger issues, more important issues, issues where they need to not just boot you from the site, but give you a timed boot or even sometimes a ban.
Yeah, because it's just yeah, it takes like she said, it takes a lot, and I think I've been called every name in the book, and I think they even started
And that's
making
just
up
from
some
me.
just to call me. Yeah, no,
It's
that's
just
true.
from me.
But yeah, I mean, it's just, you gotta learn that, I mean, even if they're specifically targeting their insults or whatever at you gotta realize that, you know, first of all, who cares? Secondly, it's not always really directed at you. You're just the person there that they can throw it at. So sometimes it's just frustrations with the situation or maybe the site in general, and you are just the person that happened to be in that spot at the time. So you've
You're their direct
really
point of contact.
exactly. So really you got to learn to
Have a thick skin.
yeah. Oh, and yeah, I don't need to speak as Darth Vader or dress as Darth Vader, trust me. Especially, several years back, just me going into a room and seeing Superman right in your face has shut down a lot of situations. So,
I've been known to turn into Michael Jackson when dealing with the situation and people just aren't listening and not wanting to, stop their arguments. I have a Michael Jackson avatar saved and I will turn into that and that will stop everyone quick. That or talking about cupcakes.
yeah, I've had some where this dude just will not shut up. He just keeps going on, and suddenly I port to his avatar, and the whole room's like, "Oh shit,"
Yep.
and it just goes silent, and the person's just dead silent as well. So
And I know we make it kind of sound stressful being in these roles. It can be a little bit at times, but it's also a lot of fun. And that's one thing that being a guide, a leader, or any volunteer, a tech vol, yes, we have our difficult situations to deal with, but we also have a lot of fun dealing with them. We have, and just so you know, even when it comes to booting someone from the region, not even, and it's even more so when booting someone from the site, but even booting someone from the region, that's not, I know a lot of people accuse our leaders or protectors of uh, going on a power trip and you just want to boot people. It's a last resort. And a lot of times we're even debating with ourselves, God, I really don't want to boot this person, but we have to do it for for X reasons, we have to do it.
yeah, and you have people that and other times you have people. It's like, why don't you just boot these people? Why don't you just? And it's like, first of all, it might not have escalated to a bootable offense,
Yeah.
and second of all, sometimes you think you can either see that booting's not going to help, or that booting might cause a bigger issue,
Yeah.
and so you need to try to eliminate all other options
And
before it comes to that.
becoming a leader is a great way to get a feel for that of when it's appropriate to boot someone and when it's not, and when it might be more appropriate to take more action, as in not just booting them from the region, but booting them from the site as well. So the leader role is actually a really, really good way for our volunteers to see what it would be like, get a little bit of a taste of what it would be like to be a protector and decide if they want to go for it still or they might just want to stay as leader, and that's okay. We have
Yeah.
nothing against someone who would want to just, you know what, I don't want to do, because there are some people, we've had people do that before. We've even had people move up to leader and say, you know what, I don't want to this responsibility of
Hmm.
having to break up fights and address people and stuff because they get yelled at, because they get up, people upset with them. And they're like, you know what, can I go back down to being a guide? That's okay too. We have no problem with that. We will never look down on you like, oh, you couldn't cut it as a leader. No, it's up to everyone what they want to do, because volunteering should be fun. And if doing one of these things is stressing you out, then that takes the fun away from it. And that's what's so good about the fact that we're going to have the helper role too now, is if someone becomes a guide and they just realize, you know what, I just don't want to do this, but I still want to help. then they can move down to, or they can move back to the helper role, and that's okay too.
Yeah. And we've had some, going back to the deal of promotions and things like that, some have wanted to be promoted in the past and maybe been turned down. And it might not have been because they're just not the right material for that, but it could be that they are so much better at the
Hmm.
role that they currently are
Yeah.
that it would actually be a disservice to both them and the members to put them in some other role. Some of them are just kick-ass guides, and some of them are better at dealing with situations.
Yeah.
So it really, kind of got to see too what you're best at.
Yeah. And I think that's basically it for the basics of it, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
I think we can move on to the Q&A now if anybody has any questions for us. Oh, and just so everyone knows, you can't apply to be a protector. You have to start as a guy. Well, now it's starting as a helper and
Yeah,
moving through the different ranks, working your way up to it. And there's a reason for that. And I think we've kind of outlined here a lot of what that reason is.
yeah. We need to see that you are prepared for that.
Yeah.
Plus, a protector and even us staff mods, we are also guides. So if it comes down to it, you will also sometimes just have to be a guide and just have to help people around and
Hmm.
not even worry about the protector or staff side of things.
Yeah,
So
exactly. We go back to our roots and even give tours at times too. I know I've seen Vixen going out giving a tour. I've done a tour here and there.
yeah, and even when I can't do a tour, a actual take you around tour, I've sat in PM and say, okay, now what do you see here? Okay, now do this, and give them a text tour. So we still do some of the same stuff, just
Yeah.
maybe in slightly different ways.
Hmm.
Just a sec.
Well, our guide application is, and it will probably change a little bit, especially since we're going to have the helper role. But the guide application is set out because we need to have an understanding of how much you understand the site and how it works and what you would be limited to doing if certain situations were to come up. So we know, because we know there's a question on there that asks, you know, basically all hell's broken loose and there's no protectors and no staff mods on that you can ask, how would you handle it? We need to see if, as a guide, how you would handle that. Do you know or kind of think you know what the proper steps are? We don't expect everyone to have all the right answers to these questions. We just want to get a look at how your thinking process, what you know and what you don't know. Are you close to the correct answer? Are you really, really far off that maybe we need to have you get a little bit better understanding of how things work?
Yeah, yeah, and yeah. So I mean, whatever. If we see that there's certain things that maybe you're not quite there on, but you're there on enough stuff, then we can help you out with the rest, so that because no one's going to know everything. So
Yeah.
as for the stipends, um, we don't really go too much into that because first of all, there's not really a set thing, but we do
And it is
kind
a
of.
volunteer position.
Yeah. So I mean, like it is volunteer, so we're not really paying you. We're not, and we don't. We also don't want people doing it just for a payment, just for. Um, but we do kind of, give thank yous as
Yeah.
in certain forms to our vols that really are trying.
And put in the time. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, there are some. thank you gifts and things that we do give. But
Because being a volunteer should be about wanting to help the site, wanting to help the members, wanting to help it grow. I always think it's awesome when I get messages from members saying how much they appreciated getting help from our volunteers and staff when they first joined. And now that they've learned the site better or have been with the site for a number of years and have time on their hands, they want to give back to the community. I think it's so awesome to see that. Someone wanting to help because they want to give back to the site that gave them so much too. And that's
yeah,
why we got into it. We wanted to help. We wanted to help it grow.
yeah, it's like I came here specifically for sex and nothing else. I
Perfect.
had no plans. Hold on just a second. My alarm's going off. Okay, but
Touching on
yeah,
what he's oh, go ahead.
sorry, I had to stop my alarm. Normally I'm just waking up at this time for my shift. But so yeah, I mean, I came here for that one thing and ended up enjoying helping people.
Yeah.
And so that's how I am here now. And so yeah, it's just people want to help and we like to have them help and we like to encourage them.
I didn't even think I was going to be here even a week when I joined because again, I didn't have a computer at home. It was because of RLC that I got internet and a computer at home. But even when Mr. T approached me about volunteering, and told me that, sometimes we'll even hire from within if we're looking for people to fill certain staff roles. And I just remember thinking, what could I ever do here? At the time, I was working in medical billing. I was working in an office and enjoying what I was doing. And I thought, what could I ever do here? I never ever thought I would become a volunteer. Really, definitely never thought 16 years later I would have been employed by this company for 15 years. It's the
Exactly. I
job I've actually held the longest because I've
exactly. I mean,
enjoyed it so much.
yeah, I started out when I was working when joined the site, I was an alarm tech.
Yeah.
So I was doing burglar and security alarms and cameras. And, whenever they had to lay people off, I was fortunate that I was able to go here full time then.
Mhm.
But so yeah, it's just I've been here that long because I love the people and I love helping the people.
And as for stepping up the ladder, there is no exact timeline, especially because everyone is different. And some people, as SG was saying, some people are better suited to the role that they have. Others, you know, do, and people, a lot of people do want to move up, but a lot of times we have what's called the community volunteer education program, and that's what a program that it's a it's like a little training seminar that I do, and I do a voice training, and then they get a little assignment, and that's where we see how suited you are for the next role. Some people may get it right away. Usually we like volunteers to be in their current role, active in their current role for at least 6 months before we'll even consider letting you even take that program to try to move up the ladder. But again, there's no guarantee. Some people move up very quickly. Others, it may take them a little bit longer, so there's no set amount of time.
Plus, it also depends too. I mean, if we're not getting a whole lot of applicants, we're not getting a whole lot of new guides. And
Yeah.
if we're not getting a whole lot of new guides, bumping up half of them to leader would cut down on a lot of the guides. So sometimes we may not be bringing any up for a while.
As for the head of each role, we don't have a head guide, we don't have a head leader, head protector. It's basically World Ops who runs the guide program, from guides to leaders to protectors to community moderators, and the staff mods, Sweet Guide, Tones, Vixen, and myself. We all help Ken oversee the program. So we would be the heads of the programs. Not we don't have like head guide or anything like that.
Yeah, we're the ones directly involved with it, and then we report everything to World Ops.
Mhm.
So anything else?
Um, I've Marximus. What do you mean by leeches? Before we answer that.
We are in the World Ops department,
Hmm.
but we aren't actually World Ops ourselves. So,
Yeah,
you know,
Ken is World Ops.
a lot of people kind of get that confused too by say, well, you know, you're World Ops, so can you check on? It's like, no, we do
We
have to send
we
things
do
to
help.
World
We
Ops.
can help with certain things, a little extra, but we also have limitations on what we can help with because we don't have the World Ops role.
Yeah, and you know, I get people, you know, well, can you check my account for blah blah blah? And it's like, well, no, actually, we don't have access to that. That would either be World Ops directly or support. We are just kind of the middleman in between.
Well, basically, asking and begging for money is not against the rules. It's up to each person whether they help that member or not. It's all done on a, kind of a quote unquote buyer beware basis. If you don't know the person and you don't know that they're actually using the raise for what they're claiming they're going to use it for, someone will say, "Oh, hey, I just need 5 raise for my VIP," or it's really up to you to decide if you want to trust them that they're going to use it for that or if they're going around collecting. All we would say is if you don't know the person well, then maybe don't help them. I know that sounds harsh, but again, you want to make sure because rays aren't easy to come by, and a lot of members buy their own rays. So if you don't want to give it to someone, then I would just say don't give them to the people that you know and trust are going to use them for something good or for what they claim they're going to use them for.
Yeah, I mean, and as far as you know, when once it goes to PM, it's a little harder for us to do, partially just because we're not seeing it unless someone reports it.
Yeah.
And you know, on that, we don't know if you're the only person who's got this or if 50 other people's got this. And you know, that's one reason why we say ignore if you know if you just don't want to see it. So yeah, I know a lot of people think ignore is just a cop out, but there are specific reasons. And even in situations where we may have to remove someone, we may even know that we're going to remove someone, but we still advise everyone to ignore because we've got to put out that fire before we can get to the cause of it.
Mhm. So are there any other questions related to the guide or leader role before we finish off our little workshop? Going once,
Twice.
3 times a lady. Oh, wait.
I was actually thinking that. So
Okay, that's scary. Well, then, if that's all for today, thank you everyone so much for coming out to let us chew your ear off and let us ramble for a little bit. We had a lot of fun. And tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. PST, we have one of our protectors, OMG, doing one of these little workshops too, where she'll be going over a day in the life of a protector and explaining more in more detail what protectors do. I'll be there with her, but she'll be the one running that presentation. So we hope to see you guys there too.
thank you very much.
Have a good day and enjoy the rest of the convention.
Bye.
Bye.